Hello, everyone. My name is Laura Gross. I am a security consulting manager with Accenture, and today I'll be your moderator for this session. Today we're going to be discussing our partnership with Google and what the next generation of cybersecurity really looks like. Joining me today are two of our Accenture security leaders, Boyce and Thexton. Rob is our global cyber resilience lead, and Rex is our global cyber protection and security technology officer. Together, Rex and Rob are really true thought leaders and innovators in the space, so I'm really excited to ask them and probe on some questions today around the partnership. So without further ado, let's delve into the session. We're going to be discussing our collaborative excellence with Accenture's partnership with Google, coupled with the revolutionary cybersecurity space of MXDR and Gen AI, ushering in this really new era of cybersecurity. So without further ado, Rex, I'll start with you. Can you provide an overview of why cybersecurity is currently at an inflection point, its implications for our clients, and why it has become such a complex issue?
Yeah, I think today's world has broad security implications, and with weakening enterprise security parameters and the expanse of the attack surface and the migration to cloud, security has had a hard time keeping up with the different nuances. What worked for the last 25 years isn't going to work for tomorrow, and so with that, we're seeing a big shift in how we go to market and what we're trying to do, and that's why our partnership with Google is so important, and we'll talk more about that later. And I think the other thing is, with all the regulations that are coming up, a lot of our clients are falling into the trap again, where they think compliance equals security, and I think what we're trying to help our clients do is making sure as they're meeting their compliance needs, they're also staying secure, and that's super important in this world. And I think the other thing that we've seen is this tool proliferation. Over the last 8 to 10 years, we've seen best of breed. And I think from different surveys from Gartner, from analysts and other vendors, you're seeing most CISOs have 75 to 80 plus cybersecurity tools in their infrastructure. And so we see this opportunity as we're seeing consolidation with vendors, acquisitions, and tool capabilities, especially in the security operations space. We're seeing the ability to provide an end-to-end platform that can drive meaningful business outcomes for security, and I think that's super important from that perspective. And then with the escalating pace of technology change around Gen AI, when we hit RSA, I think for those of you who are here, that's all everybody could talk about was how Gen AI is going to do this, how it's going to do that. Solve world hunger, and I think we're starting to see a lot of people jump onto that bandwagon, but there's also the part about securing it as well as leveraging it to drive security outcomes, and we're very focused on both from that perspective. And then the other piece is, the step-by-step approach is no longer valid. We need a giant leap forward, and I think that brings new opportunities from focusing on incidents to resilience and proactive versus reactive, because a lot of the security measures have been in place, and I've been doing this a long time, have been very reactive, and now what we're trying to do is, can we leverage Gen AI, can we leverage AI foundational models to drive meaningful proactive security? And I think that's taking a step back from just having security people look at what AI use cases are available, but also looking at broader data scientists and being able to drive that. And then lastly, security needs to become an integral part of the business. A lot of times it's a black box. The security guys, we're over here, we just do this and protect. But in order to help our organization scale, we need to scale security along with the business drivers and business outcomes. And I think it needs to be more up front and center in the business conversation, because a lot of our clients have slowed their migrations to cloud or different things because they couldn't make sure they were going to be secure. And so it's super important that we frame security as a key business driver and a key business issue, and have everything with security by design in it.
I think if I could just maybe add a little bit to that, I don't know how, but I'll do my best.
I know, I went long.
I mean, for me, the fundamentals of security have not changed, at least in 25 years since I've been doing this. We take the same approach over and over. We aggregate data, we look for threats, we try and find anomalies, and then we respond. Very reactive, as Rex said. And I think we need to instill a new way of thinking, and we need to make some key pivots in the way we approach this problem. I think two ways to me, and they apply very much to what we're doing with Google. One is We need to look at data differently. I think as a security community, we haven't even began to ask the right questions of our data. Again, it's been very threat focused. So I think we need to move from this concept of threat data to all data. And we need to start thinking about how to leverage different types of data to help us make better business and security decisions. I think what we saw in the Russia-Ukraine conflict is an interesting example, thinking about how to use causation from geopolitical events to start predicting where we're seeing threat actors operate in at least in this case, in the Western world, that was outside of the conflict zone. And I think we were able to start thinking about leveraging that data and applying it to our ecosystem and security that way, and also with the supply chain. So that showed us things that we didn't really expect that we'd have to deal with from a supply chain perspective. And so I think if we start just digging into data better, I think we need to start asking better questions and using more data than just threat data. So I think that's one big area. I think another area that we can really pivot to is we have security people cannot solve the security problem. We've proven that again, at least in 25 years. And I think it's because we're not creating enough diversity of cognitive diversity within the workforce. And so we're still recruiting people from STEM programs. And I think we need to think about how to enable additional people from different backgrounds to be able to get into the security space to help us think about this challenge differently. And again, I think because of the disruptive technologies with Gen AI, I think we're going to be able to do that in a much more meaningful way than we have been able to do in the past.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Thank you both for sharing. Rex, at a high level, how are we as Accenture and Google going to really move the needle in cybersecurity?
Yeah, I think when we were looking for how we were going to change the security market, we met with Sunil Patti. I think some of you have seen him, but their vision, his vision, and their Google's vision for how they're going to take security forward, aligned with our vision, right? We needed a step change. It's not security for today, but it's what it's going to be tomorrow, and we were super excited about that opportunity, and we both had the commitment in propelling this proactive measures and reshaping the security of, the trajectory of security. I think if you look at it, we look at it this way. We have, we're the largest security services provider in the world, right? They have the #1 security brand in the world with Mandiant that they bought. They're committed to being, top, one of the top security software providers in the world. If we can combine these forces, we can drive the market into more meaningful change and drive that vision of next-gen security. I think, and with that, we had the eye towards the future. And, part of this thing, and we're going to show you later today, is some of the things that we've been doing, working with them on the SecPalm and security workbench from the Gen AI piece, which is super exciting. And we see huge hope that this is going to drive this. And it's about protecting the critical assets, right? At the end of the day, making sure that we can drive the security strengths. But it's the collaboration, I think, that's made it a special relationship. I see some of the Googlers in here, and we've had a great collaboration with product management and working with them and driving what capabilities and what needs to be in the future. That we truly believe, if you want to go with the same old, there's plenty of vendors out there to do that, but it's what we're looking, the forward-looking aspect of what we're doing and driving, product and what we feel security should be, as Rob, so eloquently spoke about earlier. That's where we're headed, and that's why we're super excited about this partnership. And we're seeing great results. I mean, just, since we launched, formally before RSA, we've had, great results. We're driving great outcomes for clients, and it's been great fun so far.
Definitely. Thank you, Rex, for sharing that vision. Rob, to you, what does that really mean tactically as a partnership?
Yeah, there's a number of key areas that we're focusing on. Rex talked about MXDR, and you will get to see a little video of some of the collaboration we have with Google in that space. But this, to me, again, going back to the data problem, I don't know a better data analytics company really than Google. So I'm really excited about how we can use the Google platform to be able to get better insights out of the data and make better decisions. So this is all going to be embedded as part of the MXDR component. But if I don't mention the fact, and Rex already mentioned, like Mandiant, like if we don't take advantage of that in our partnership, we're crazy. And so I think there's a really great opportunity for us to do a few unique things with Mandiant, and that is, when we see organizations have destructive cyber attacks, they have to have an element of not just the investigation, but also the crisis management, helping prioritize what needs to be rebuilt first, and then of course, actually doing the recovery. And there's not really a better partnership to be able to do that, because at Accenture, we have people who know every platform, every application, and we've built half of them probably, so there's not really a better way to being able to leverage the amazing IR capabilities of Mandiant coupled with the recovery capabilities of Accenture. And then the last area I want to mention is cyber intelligence. So again, going back to data, I don't think there's probably a better company that has better insights into what's happening in the world from a cyber threat perspective than Mandiant. And so we're going to be baking all of those capabilities directly into MXDR, so that we're taking advantage of not just the global visibility we have across all our managed service clients, but also what Mandiant's bringing to the table. So we're combining, as Rex said, two huge forces to be able to provide better identification of threats for our clients, and then, of course, better action on those as well.
Yeah, definitely. So let's dig into that first point around MXDR. What are we seeing as adaptive MXDR versus the traditional MXDR?
Yeah, so actually we're going to be doing two things, which I think is a bit unique. So we will have what we're calling at least a full stack MXDR that runs fully 100% within the Google ecosystem. And I think that's going to really provide special opportunities for organizations to take advantage of the Google investments around AI through the Security AI Workbench, as well as the other investments, again, through Mandiant, that we'll start seeing more and more capabilities being delivered through that platform, whether it's validation of the efficacy of detection rules within the platform, or again, whether it's being able to understand, leveraging the breach analytics from global client base. But we're also going to be developing what we're calling adaptive MXDR. And the key here is we know that every organization has a SIEM of some kind, and they've made a huge investment in that already. And so what we don't want to have to do is make them do a rip and replace across their entire ecosystem to have to do a large-scale change, because it can be a bit risky, and it's also quite expensive. And so we're going to be creating essentially an orchestration layer in the Google ecosystem that will allow us to be able to have organizations continue to use different SIEMs that they have today and orchestrate consistently across that. And so this is what we're calling, again, adaptive, because we want to make sure that we can continue to pump in what we're learning from our broader relationship to build IP within that orchestration layer, continue to build the AI components within that orchestration layer, and apply it across a company's ecosystem equally.
Definitely. All right, I don't think it would be a true spotlight session unless we really talked about Gen AI. So I would love to get into the very hot topic of Gen AI. Rex, how are we seeing Gen AI as a real game changer in cyber?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at just in the security space, we immediately set up a COE to see if we could drive, and we've came up with, I believe, over 70 use cases. We just launched a contest out to all our practitioners and came up with 260 submissions. But we focused on a handful to get started that could be actionable and tangible. And what you'll see today is what we're doing with MXDR. At our booth, there's another demo around cloud security where we can come in and speak to an LLM and ask how to meet a California privacy regulation, and then go out and actually generate, leveraging code by an LLM, generate IAC, security as code and policy as code, and automate a lot of these functions. So we're looking at ways to drive automation from that perspective. And from a cybersecurity perspective, we see it as the biggest opportunity and the biggest risk, right? And so half of our conversations are focused around securing AI. I think there's, I don't know, Scott's sitting here in the front row, but there's probably 5 to 10 a week going on with clients around the world on how do we protect this, secure enclaves and these types of things. And when we had our cybersecurity forum, CISO cybersecurity forum, which we have about 200 CISOs that sit on, everybody talked about governance, making sure they have the right technical controls and governance around it. Everybody was concerned about that. And so I think as the space evolves, what we need to do is not be rigid in our governance models, but be more agile and adapt to how we're going to see it. And I think the other thing that we're seeing, our focus on that is it's around working with what we'd call trusted AI sources, right? Trusted LLMs like, SecPalm and others. But it's critical because the telemetry and data is the key, as Rob has brought up. And so it's super important that you can, when you're doing your prompt engineering and driving that you're going against a data set that has, the widest array of telemetry. And I think, that's what we're so excited about SecPalm. It's what, 80% of the internet, all the mandiant telemetry, virus total, et cetera. It's a great set. And if you can train it properly, you can get a lot of meaningful results around that. And I think, we also did a survey of over 5,000 executives in one of our Accenture surveys, and we found that 98% of our folks of clients have an interest in using generative AI in some form or fashion. But the ironic thing was, out of that, only 6% had a plan for responsible AI. And so that was quite fascinating. But I think that's, super important to be focused on, making sure you're using AI responsibly and securely. And then, the other aspect of that research was that 40% of all working hours across all industries, including cybersecurity, will have a reduction in hours, used from that. So the automation capabilities are significant and tangible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. That's a really, really insightful. Rob, where have you seen Gen AI been applied in cyber so far?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I feel like we're in a bit of an arms race to prove where Gen AI is going to have the most tangible outcomes. I think this is probably, in my view, the third AI wave that we've lived through, but this one feels more real, right? I think because Gen AI showed us that you can feel it, you can touch it. So I think there's a few areas for me that we're doing some research on. As Rex mentioned, we identified 70 use cases very quickly across various areas of security, including cloud, privacy and regulation, of course, security operations. But three that are getting me really excited. One is around cyber intelligence. So again, going back to data, big surprise. But doing this a little bit differently. So obviously you can apply Gen AI to be able to create threat reports faster from your trusted threat data. But I think we can go a step further and start thinking about the world of data even larger. So thinking about how we can use the LLMs, especially within SecPalm, to be able to start getting more of that public-facing, higher fidelity threat data, marrying it with the data that someone like Accenture has through our 1,200 managed service clients, and where we're seeing those type of trends, but then also with the data that resides in the client environment. And this is what's most important, because we feel that it's very, very important to be building these models in actual environments with clients. So for us to build it in the back and then try and bring it to a client is not going to necessarily be the best idea. We need to make sure that we're leveraging the data that exists, because this is not something you can create fake data on and then try and apply models and hope for the best and then playing it from organization to organization. We have to do it with the data that exists. So I think that's a unique opportunity for us to be able to identify a number of design partners, which Rex has mentioned that we have, and we're applying a lot of these different use cases. Another area that is exciting to me, at least, is in the concept of exposure management. I think we have, again, in 25 years, at least in my experience, have not solved the simple problem of patching. Right? We have not been able to solve that. And that's just from vulnerability scanning data. When we think about exposure management, we have to include vulnerability data. We have to include attack surface management from outside. We have to include API security, application security. We have to look at the exposure footprint much broader than we are today. And how are we going to be able to help prioritize the remediation of those different vulnerabilities or different exposures? We're going to have to use some type of AI technology to help us do that within the context of the organization. And I think that's what's really key, right? It's not just being able to leverage the threat data that exists and the CVE scoring, but really being able to understand the business context of an organization to help prioritize those exposure remediations. And I think that's going to be a really interesting area. And then, of course, security operations. And so again, we're going to show an interesting video where we've already been doing some collaboration with Google in this space. And I think this is going to really, really help drive differentiation in a couple of ways. I think, maybe 10 years ago, we had hoped that the SOAR technology would fix this level 1 problem. And we found very quickly that there was a dependency on having very structured processes that already existed that we could automate through SOAR. And I think with AI and Gen AI, we're going to be able to identify those processes much faster, to do automation much faster. So I think that's going to be interesting. Of course, being able to produce reports that are human readable about the after actions and also doing continual learning as we go through it. I think it's going to be really exciting when we can do supervised machine learning on analysts so that we can predict how they should be responding and provide them advice on how to respond to events based on past history. I think there's so much opportunity in the security operations space to really create a huge impact, and that's been such a sore spot for us as a community for so long. So I think that's going to be really interesting as well.
Definitely, yeah, I completely agree. Rex, let's pivot a bit to discussing how business leaders can really ensure that their AI strategies are secure and being responsibly used.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. This is an important topic. As you know, organizations should be focused on whether or not to use it, but be focused on how to use it in the right way. And I think there was an interesting quote from Max Tegmark, who was an author and MIT professor. He compares the risk of AI, the risk associated with AI, to fire. So in the winter you can warm your house with fire for good, and you can also burn it down with fire. So it's a double-edged sword, so to speak. So with that in mind, obviously creating a governance framework is an important first step. I think leaders must, the key thing here is focusing on security by design, right? Or embedding security and controls. And within Accenture, our CEO mandates it to us, right? Is make sure that everything we do is secure by design, whether it's cloud migration, et cetera. And the same thing has to happen with Gen AI. And we need to make sure that we're doing that by securing the data, the physical systems, and the tools that are used. And there's a lot of interesting aspects to that, because if you look at it, the models are fed with data, and is that data secure? Where is the data lineage that's feeding these models? Is it PII? Are you putting yourself out to data exposures? People access this data. There's a lot to think about from there. And I think there's another interesting point, and one thing we learned pretty fast is, we designed, these, came up with these 70 initial use cases. One is make sure you're not, reinventing the wheel, right? So we've been very focused on collaborating with our partners, and especially Google, and making sure, because when we went through the initial list, they said, oh, we're doing these already. So okay, we'll focus on either adding complementary pieces to it or taking it a step further, because I think you can get super excited and your investment could be short-lived, because the product vendors could be coming out with these cases pretty quickly. So it's trying to understand what's in the roadmap, where it's going, and where you're going to get the most bang for your buck is super important. And then from a responsible AI perspective, if you follow our tech visions, they've been out for several years, and I think we've been talking about it for probably the last 6 or 7 years. But it's super important to have responsible AI. And I think the other thing, Rob mentioned about diverse and inclusive sets of inputs. It's super important not to create bias in your models. And I think a lot of there was one AI model, an example was used that it would literally it would look at all the hiring of the last 30 years, and it turned out to be that every time they kept looking for running their AI to get resumes, it was 30-year-old white males that were getting that. And so there's inherent bias within that. So it's making sure that you're driving the right set within your models and frameworks, and leveraging technologies that can help you guide your AI programs forward with trust, security and privacy. Those are the important things. And I think a good governance framework around that will be super important. And then making sure you understand the technical controls and where your data is going. There's a lot of neat vendors out there that are doing model discovery, because what you'll find, the other thing is there's going to be a boatload of shadow AI running around your company, because people can access ChatGPT and they can be able to, check your network telemetry to see what's going on and going outbound, and making sure people aren't going rogue on you. I think that's going to be super important as well.
Absolutely. Those are all really critical items. Rob, from your perspective, what are some very specific things that executives can start doing now for Gen AI security across their business?
Yeah, I guess a couple of things I'd mention, and Rex alluded to this. This is not something you need, you do need to prepare for, but you also need to understand this is already happening in your environments. There's already risks inherently in place, because people may not understand the governance that needs to be put in place to really safeguard this. So the first thing I would say is you need to create that governance structure, right? You need to be working with stakeholders across the organization to really understand where we are going to focus these use cases, how we want to use this responsibly, how do we protect ourselves, what is the data that we want to be able or the value we want to be able to get out of this. So I think that's really, really super important. The next part I would say is, you need to train your staff now. and not necessarily train them in how to be AI experts, but train them in understanding the risks associated with what they're doing. Because the last thing you want is someone to be using open source ChatGPT to be leaking out IP. And we've already seen this in many instances with some very large companies that have announced publicly that they have lost IP through ChatGPT because of best intentions in the workforce, but unfortunately, it caused a loss of IP. So I think we need to make sure that we're training employees appropriately. And then I think the other thing is you need to understand the risks. Rex sort of talked a little bit about we have to train the models in an unbiased way. So we have to think about this with different points of view. Again, it can't be security people only training these models. We need to be thinking differently about how we introduce or eliminate the bias around the training of the models. That's going to be super important. But I think we also need to think about the security risks associated with those. And so we need to be, as we're training these models, we need to be introducing those security exposures into the models, because we have seen, my Intel team is constantly seeing chatter on the dark web around how to, what types of exposures or what types of ways can we compromise models that exist. And we've already seen a number of different successful attacks through the models that exist today. And so just understanding what the different attack vectors that you need to start thinking about protecting yourself from, and also making sure that those are being put into the training process so the models can understand when they may be being attacked versus when it's legitimate activity. I think that's going to be something that's going to be super important for people to understand.
Definitely, I completely agree. Something I'd really like to learn more about or dig into is around workforce resiliency. What type of skills for generative AI are really required for use cases in security, such as security operations? Like, how is that shifting with Gen AI?
For me?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think there's, first of all, when I think about workforce resiliency, I don't think organizations really understand the importance of their workforce and how it contributes to true resiliency within an organization. So when we think about resiliency, generally, we're always thinking about the ability to recover from a disaster or the ability to detect something and respond to it quickly. But a lot of that is predicated on the skills of the organization, the people who are executing it. We're never going to be able to rely on robots or AI to do the entire security job. And so I just encourage organizations to, first of all, think about their workforce is truly part of that resiliency chain and make sure that the right training, the right career paths, all of that is built in. So that's number one. I think as far as Gen AI, though, what I'm personally super excited about is the ability for people that are coming from non-traditional, computer science or science backgrounds to be able to get introduced into security. Again, to help us think differently about how to solve this problem. I think the Security Operations Center is one of my favorite examples, because right now, even level 1 analysts have to be super technical to be able to operate these 75 to 100 different tools that exist within an enterprise. And what I'm hoping we're going to start seeing is a less of a reliance on that technical competency, and that start to shift to more critical thinking. Have them be almost more like detectives and asking the right questions. What should they be thinking about? Is almost more of a traditional intelligence background. What questions do we need to be asking from this data? And then have the AI or have the technology be able to automate itself and be able to give the information back to analysts. So again, they can ask the next question or they can make the next step. And I think that's going to be something that's truly going to be fascinating. I personally predict that we're going to see a lot less technical people in a SOC in the future and a lot more detectives, I guess, or critical thinkers. I think that's going to be super fascinating, for sure.
And just to add on, I think, as we focus on building our workforce for security, I think we have 19,000 security professionals, and we still, at any given time, have several hundred open roles of people that we can't fill. And there's not enough security professionals in the world to accommodate this. So the promise of this is super promising. If we can automate a lot of, we'll show you today, some of the redundant tasks and reduce the time that they spend on these tasks significantly, we should be able to, like I said, have a more resilient workforce and leverage that. And I think the other exciting thing is the one thing we're great at security is providing a lot of data and a lot of dashboards and even in data security and all these things. You get tons of visibility. We've had great visibility over these years, but what do we do with that visibility? And I think the promise of this is being able to train off of that and actually action it, because everything we're focused around is not only just from a visibility perspective, but actually actioning it and automating the actioning of it, because that, I think, will help our clients scale their security programs significantly. Because I think the biggest problem, everybody's good at getting the base controls for security in, but then when you want to migrate 1,000 workloads, either your operations costs skyrocket or you don't have enough people, so you slow it down. And I think that's kind of, also the promise of this from a workforce resiliency perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, may I add one more
I
thing?
guess,
Is that okay?
yeah, go
Thank
ahead.
you. I think, just again, building on what Rex was saying, I think the ability to automate is going to be amazing. And of course, when people hear now AI and automation, they always think, well, I'm going to lose my job. And obviously, that's not the point. Because of the deficiency or the deficit in skilled people, we're going to be able to redirect people to these more important roles that need to be done. And I think that's going to be a huge benefit of what I think AI is going to bring to the table as well.
Yeah, no, that's definitely something to really look forward to. Thank you both for your perspectives on that. So getting more back into the actual partnership with Google, what are some specifics on what that expanded partnership looks like with Google, Rob?
Well, very exciting. We have a video to show you in a few minutes. To set the video up a little bit, we have been developing a number, again, going back to those use cases, a number of different use cases within the security operations space, within the security AI workbench. And so we're going to show you one example now in a few minutes. Actually, you know what? If maybe instead of me talking, I think the video is probably better. Can we roll the video?
In cybersecurity, the threat landscape is rapidly evolving. Security operations centers are challenged to hire, retain, and scale the right people, deploy, adopt, and sustain the right technologies, and accelerate responses to the unpredictable threat landscape. Time to response is a critical factor in preventing a catastrophic security breach. A new threat actor's activity has been attributed to the Temp.Armageddon campaign, where they leveraged a Cobalt strike beacon to deliver a malicious payload to multiple corporations. Pat, a security intelligence analyst for Accenture's Managed Extended Detection and Response team, noticed the new threat that could directly impact company assets. Pat quickly logged into the MXDR platform powered by the Google Cloud AI Security Workbench and reviewed the current detection logic. He noticed there wasn't a rule that would monitor or alert for this new behavior. Pat created a new rule and then enabled the retro hunt of the rule to determine if this threat actor was already inside a client's environment. After the retro hunt completes, the security AI assistant will send out a Cobalt strike alert. Sam is a security operations center analyst on the same team as Pat. Sam worked with his SOC team to initially develop and deploy the current threat detection rules. At the time, Sam and his Tier 1 peers were new to SOC operations and may not have strong enough rules in place to detect, respond, and mitigate threat activity spawning from the use of Cobalt strike beacons. Sam is utilizing a security AI assistant chat. Meanwhile, Morgan, who does not work for Accenture, is faced with the same situation as Sam, without an AI assistant.
Hello? Hi, Sam. I hope you had a good weekend. I've received 2 important alerts that I need to share with you. I've identified 1 MITRE attack tactic, techniques, and procedure at play. I've also attached the alerts for your reference. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Sam asks the AI assistant about Cobalt strike attacks and how they are used. He receives a summarized explanation of Cobalt strike attacks and a list of its related attackers and uses.
How should I escalate this alert?
I suggest that we escalate the incident to Fred Vespucci, a Level 3 SOC specialist. The triggered alerts might indicate a dangerous exploit with Cobalt strike attempting to compromise 2 hosts. Considering the severity of these alerts, it is highly probable that the activities stem from a Cobalt strike beacon.
The large language model, SecPalm, considers the level of criticality or severity, MITRE attack framework tactics, similar historic incidents, and chooses an appropriate path of escalation.
The suggested action is to escalate this incident to Fred Vespucci, a Level 3 SOC specialist, to avoid further breaches.
While Sam has rapidly escalated the incident, Morgan would take much longer to research and decide how to best escalate the situation.
Thanks. Can you generate a client incident report for me?
The security AI assistant generates a client incident report.
The incident was escalated for further investigation and initial remediation steps were taken. A copy of the client incident report document has been saved.
The Security AI Assistant generates the client incident report as a Word document so he can review, edit, and share with his client. Meanwhile, Morgan has spent the larger portion of the day manually creating an incident report.
Okay, this is done. Can you give me feedback?
The AI assistant will look at its chat history and incident metadata. Sam receives real-time feedback, while Morgan will not get feedback until a meeting later in the week. Utilizing the Security AI assistant, Sam was able to accurately escalate the incident, create an incident report, and receive critical feedback in minutes. For a security analyst, without the Security AI assistant, this would take hours. This is just one analyst's story. At scale, an organization would benefit from 80 to 90% time savings, allowing analysts to focus on important and critical tasks.
Oh.
Yeah. I think that one of the things we did was, this is actually working in real, but if we just did it online, it would be pretty boring, right? But so we tried to put a story around it to show the time savings and whatnot, but I'll let Rob continue. But no, we're super excited about it, and I think Jonathan, who did it, is in here actually in his team, so super excited.
Yeah, again, I think I've spent too much of my life in the security operations space to not hopefully make an impact by the time I'm finished. So I think this is why I'm really excited about this. I think there's really a lot of opportunity. This was built on top, of course, on what Google has been creating as part of the foundation for allowing us to do this. And we're really focused on creating the content and the context around the detection, response, all of that aspect. I think here, a few things that I find really awesome were the real-time feedback, quite honestly. Like, this is something that we don't do enough of for SOC analysts. Like, did you respond well? Did you not respond well? And in the video, even like a week later, she might find out. I'm not sure you ever find out, quite honestly. So if you're able to get real-time feedback around how you responded, what you did right, what you did wrong, I think that's super interesting from a person perspective. But we're also able to give the models feedback as well and make adjustments to them based on the actions of the people. So I think just being able to have that continual improvement, constant continual improvement in the Security Operations Center is going to be a game changer just for that capability.
Absolutely, and it's great to just see it in action too.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rex.
No, I was going to add, and you know, the collaboration on this is, you know, we didn't just send some prompts over and worked. You know, we worked very closely with the Google team. You know, I think it was a set of 150 plus prompts that we did retraining on until we got the efficacy to a point, you know, where we were 100% confident in the models. And so I think that collaboration is super exciting for us and the ability to help, you know, drive that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, very exciting. Thank you. So we'd like to open the floor up for questions, if there are any. Please just state your name, the company you're associated with, and your question.
It looks like you get to dance, Rob.
Yeah, that's the alternative, guys. If you don't ask a question, then I've got to dance. So. And it's not going to be great. Yeah, thank you.
You didn't want to see that.
I'll start that. My name is Ajit Verma. I work for a small company called Ellipsis Health. We are actually now also working with Accenture and currently actually filling out the security questionnaire. So I thought I will attend here. So the last comment that you made about, you know, this AI assistant about, you know, auto-generating the report and things like that, is that available to like a larger, you know, cloud, you know, who use, you know, Google Cloud as a platform, or is this only available if, you know, somebody becomes like, you know, your customer? And is there any plan to also, you know, open this as an open source?
Yeah, I think so. Right now, it's in with our MXDR platform, but it'll work with either, you know, the full stack solution or the hybrid solution from that perspective. And it is based off of currently, you know, based off of SecPalm and the security workbench. So yeah, right now it's very Google centric, but like I said, you know, we're making a big bet with the Google security operations stack. And yeah, in theory, over time, it'll work. You know, if there's another underlying backend like, you know, Splunk and whatnot, it could eventually work with that. But our first focus was getting it, you know, tied into our full stack MXDR, so we can get productivity out of our SOC analysts and scale. And then we rolled it out to the hybrid model, and then we'll continue to roll it out and enhance it over time. If that makes sense.
Thank you for the question.
Hi, my name's Nick. I'm from Google, work in Australia. Just a couple of questions. One, on the MXDR solution, has that been rolled out to customers already, or is it being trialled? And as a follow-up to that, is the plan that all of Accenture's MXDR solutions will be built on Google security technology? Thanks.
Yeah. Well, it's being rolled out to the guy sitting 2 seats over from you right now as we speak. But no, yeah, for actually one of our customers in Australia, yeah, is one of the first development design partners for the full stack MXDR. But we rolled out the hybrid version to probably dozen clients over the last 3 months from that perspective. But our full stack MXDR platform is we chose Google because we felt our visions were aligned and where we were headed and where we wanted to go with the security marketplace. So that's where we're heading, and that's our bet right now.
And I would just to answer the second half of your question, we want to push as many organizations to use the full stack MXDR because I think they're going to get the most value out of that. But even when they still they want to maintain a Splunk or a Sentinel or whatever as the back end, that adaptive layer that I had talked about will be able to still operate that and offer that regardless. So we're hoping that all of our clients and MSS clients in the future will be Google customers in some way or fashion through our adaptive response capability. We might have time for one more, yeah?
Yeah.
Hi, Paul Suarez. I'm the CISO for Casey's, a convenience store chain in the Midwest. Robert, you had mentioned you only get savings, if you will, from SOAR if your processes are well-defined. How well-defined do you mean? And if we've moved to Chronicle and I have plans on gaining value from SOAR, how much time should I expect before I really start to see that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think this was one of the early misconceptions that you can deploy SOAR and you can automate all your level 1 activities. But what we found is most security operations centers had a 10-step process to do a response. But in reality, when you program a SOAR, you have to think about it step by step. So that 10-step process became an 80-step process. And so the foundation of process engineering that needed to be put in place was fairly significant. But I think by leveraging the AI capabilities, we're going to be able to start to being able to create those processes much faster. So the value getting out of a SOAR should be faster than what we've experienced in the past. Most organizations who bought a SOAR implemented one use case, and that use case was phishing almost every single time, and then they found out, wow, that was hard. Maybe we're not going to focus on this. But I think, again, because of the AI capabilities, I think we're going to be able to do it a lot faster. So, you know, I'm really excited, again, because this space has been so close to my heart for so long. I think we're going to be able to make a huge impact in the security operations space.